welcome to a deep dive
Okay.
into a fascinating idea.
Oh, right.
It's the idea that childhood, as we know it,
hmm
isn't a biological given.
Okay.
It's actually a social construct.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to unpack Neil Postman's book, The Disappearance of Childhood,
Right.
to understand exactly how that happened.
That's good.
So childhood,
Ah,
it seems so natural, right? Like kids being kids.
it really does, yeah.
But Postman throws that into question.
He does. He really challenges that assumption.
And, he was a media scholar,
Right.
so he had this interesting perspective.
Yeah.
His concern wasn't just theoretical.
Uh-huh.
He was actually worried about how technology, even back then,
Mhm.
was changing childhood
Yeah.
in ways we might not fully grasp.
Makes sense.
But before we get to the disappearing part,
Okay.
I'm hooked on this whole invention of childhood thing.
Right. Like, where did it even come from? That's
Exactly.
the basis of his whole argument.
Yeah.
So Postman points out that for a long time, like way back in the Middle Ages, childhood as a distinct phase just wasn't really a thing.
Really? So kids were just like mini adults.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Wow, I'm picturing like kids in little blacksmith aprons.
Uh-huh. Maybe not blacksmiths,
Okay.
but you're not far off.
So they were just doing the same things as adults.
Yeah, they worked alongside them. They were exposed to the same information.
Wow.
There wasn't this separate sphere of existence.
Okay, so when did things start to change?
Well, Postman points to kind of a surprising invention as the turning point,
Okay,
the printing press.
the printing press. I mean, that's huge for knowledge and all.
Right.
But how does that create childhood?
Well, it's all about literacy.
Okay,
Before the printing press, information was mostly oral.
right, passed down through stories.
Exactly.
But then reading becomes essential.
Yeah, it becomes the key to accessing knowledge.
Okay,
And that changes everything.
because suddenly you need time to learn how to read?
Exactly. That's where this idea of childhood comes in.
Interesting.
A period dedicated to learning.
Separate from the adult world.
Yeah, separate from work and responsibilities.
It's crazy to think about,
Yeah.
like the printing press having that kind of ripple effect.
It's a huge shift.
And it wasn't just about, learning ABCs. Right?
No, not at all.
What else changed?
Well, think about schools. They had to be redesigned.
Makes sense.
And we start to see books specifically for children,
Oh, interesting.
even clothing styles.
Yeah?
They start to distinguish children from adults.
It's like a whole new way of seeing kids.
It really is. It's a complete societal shift.
So childhood goes from basically non-existent
Mm-hmm.
to this like carefully constructed phase of life.
Yeah,
Makes you wonder, was it always meant to be this way?
it's a good question.
Or was it just a result of the technology?
Well, that's at the heart of Postman's argument.
Right.
He suggests that childhood is a social construct
Okay.
shaped by the dominant media of the time.
So like the printing press was kind of the defining media
Exactly.
of that era.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that wasn't the end of the story.
Oh, definitely not.
Things kept evolving.
Of course.
I mean, then we have the telegraph not too long after.
Right.
Did that change things?
It did.
Okay, how so?
Well, it really sped up the flow of information.
Ooh.
Suddenly, information could travel really fast
I see.
across huge distances.
So even if you tried to, like, shield children from things,
Yeah.
they could still find out about them.
Exactly. And that starts to erode that foundation
Okay.
that childhood was built on with its controlled flow of information.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But that's just the beginning.
Oh, no.
The real game changer,
Okay.
the one that really shakes things up,
Mhm.
is television.
Television. All right, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Why was it such a disruptor? I mean, we all grew up with it.
Right.
What was so different?
Well, think back to that information hierarchy, the one we talked about with the printing press.
Right, literacy was the key.
Exactly. It created a division between those who could access information
Okay.
and those who couldn't.
I see.
Television comes along and just demolishes that.
Because it's so visual.
Exactly.
You don't need to read to understand it.
Right. Information, good and bad,
Mhm.
becomes instantly accessible to everyone.
Regardless of age.
Right. Or literacy level.
So it bypassed those gatekeepers.
Exactly.
It's like, those old pictures
Yeah.
of families huddled around the radio.
Yeah, I've seen those.
It seems like a shared experience.
It does.
But it also feels more controlled.
Right.
Television just throws all these images at you.
It does, constantly.
And not all of them are appropriate for kids.
That's the problem.
Right.
That's where the lines between childhood and adulthood start to blur.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Postman argues that television exposes children to adult things,
Like what?
adult content, behaviors, ways of thinking,
Hmm.
long before they're ready for it.
Interesting. So what does that look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine we're looking at the world through Postman's eyes.
Right.
You might see kids using language that seems too mature or having attitudes that don't match their age.
Yeah.
Their interests might align more with adults.
Okay.
Even their clothes, their way of carrying themselves,
Interesting.
might seem prematurely sophisticated.
He calls this adultified children.
Exactly.
And at the same time, you have adults clinging to childhood things.
Right, it's like a mirror image.
It's like those grown-ups obsessed with superheroes.
Yes, exactly.
Didn't Postman talk about that too?
He did.
Okay. What did he say?
He saw it as this blurring effect where childhood and adulthood lose their clear distinctions.
And they kind of bleed into each other.
Right.
That's a little unsettling.
It is, because if the boundaries become too weak, what happens to childhood as a protected space?
Makes you wonder if we're doing enough to protect kids
It's a valid concern.
from this information overload.
Especially nowadays.
Exactly. We were just talking about those blurred lines
Yeah.
between childhood and adulthood.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unsettling, right?
It is. It is.
Especially with technology advancing so fast.
It seems like every day there's something new.
Exactly.
It's hard to keep up.
But, you know, there's something I found interesting in Postman's book.
Okay, what's that?
He actually saw some potential
Really?
in a technology that we often blame for these problems.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, he saw potential in computers.
Computers. Wow, that's surprising.
I know, right?
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. It does.
Especially given what we were just talking about.
Right. But his reasoning goes back to that idea of information hierarchies.
Right, like the printing press.
Exactly.
Creating one based on literacy.
So how did he see computers fitting into that?
Well, he thought computers, particularly back then,
Okay.
could create a new kind of hierarchy
Okay.
based on computer literacy.
So kids who couldn't code
Yeah.
would be locked out of certain information.
In a way, yeah.
It's almost like a digital gatekeeper,
It is. It is.
like we were talking about with the printing press.
Exactly.
He saw the need to learn programming as a barrier to entry.
Yeah, kind of like literacy was centuries ago.
But of course,
Yeah.
there's a big caveat here.
What's that?
This was before the internet,
Oh, right.
like before it really exploded.
Yeah, that changes things.
Oh, the irony.
Uh-huh, right?
Instead of limiting access,
Yeah.
computers became the ultimate gateway to information.
Talk about a prediction that didn't age well.
I know, right?
Things changed so quickly.
It's true.
I mean, what Postman didn't foresee was how user-friendly computers would become.
And the internet.
Exactly. It's so easy to use now.
So easy.
You don't need to code to access information anymore.
It's just a few clicks.
A few swipes on a screen.
And that creates a whole new set of challenges. It's almost like we've swung to the opposite extreme.
In a way.
Instead of too little information,
Yeah.
kids now have almost too much.
And not all of it good.
Exactly.
And that's where Postman's concerns become even more relevant.
Okay. In what way?
Well, he talks about childhood as a time for innocence, for gradual exploration, or for discovery.
Right.
But the internet often throws that out the window.
So what are we supposed to do?
It's tough.
We can't just unplug kids from the digital worlds, right?
I don't think that's realistic.
No.
I mean, Postman wouldn't necessarily advocate for a complete disconnect,
Okay.
but he does stress the importance of parents.
Parents being involved.
Absolutely, especially in this new digital landscape.
So what does that look like practically?
Okay, well, he's a big proponent of shaping kids' media experiences.
So not just setting limits on screen time,
Right, it's more than that.
although that's important too.
Of course, but it's also about being deliberate.
About the content. It's like being a curator
Yeah, kind of.
for their digital world.
I like that analogy.
But it sounds exhausting.
It can be, but it's important.
If we're serious about preserving childhood,
I think so.
but it's not just about shielding them from bad stuff, right?
It's also about teaching them media literacy.
So they can think critically
Exactly.
at what they see online.
Question those messages.
Right, because they're bombarded with so much.
All the time.
That's huge.
Today.
Helping them develop those skills.
Yeah, critical thinking skills.
So they're not just passively absorbing everything.
Right, that's the key.
Postman believed that parents have a responsibility to help kids become discerning,
Yeah, discerning consumers of information.
to understand how media can be used,
Right, to persuade, to manipulate.
even to mislead.
Exactly.
It's like giving them armor
It is.
to navigate this digital world.
That's a great way to put it.
But what about the other side of it?
What do you mean?
like fostering those positive aspects of childhood.
Okay, yeah.
The curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
the wonder.
The joy of discovery.
Right. How do we protect those things?
That's where it becomes crucial
Okay.
to create space for experiences
Yeah.
outside the digital realm.
Away from screens.
Exactly.
So things like playing outside,
Yes.
exploring nature.
Absolutely.
It almost feels like we're pushing back against the tide,
In a way, I think we are.
trying to reclaim those aspects of childhood that are in danger of being lost
I agree.
in this digital age.
But I think it's a fight worth having.
I do too.
Because if we lose sight of what makes childhood special, what makes it unique, we lose something really precious.
That brings us back to Postman's book, right?
The disappearance of childhood.
It's not inevitable,
No.
but it's something we need to be aware of.
Definitely.
And actively work to prevent.
We have to be proactive.
It comes down to choices.
Yes.
As parents, as educators, as a society.
Our choices matter.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the Middle Ages to the printing press,
The telegraph, television.
computers, the internet.
It's quite a journey.
It really shows how much this whole idea of childhood,
Yeah.
it's not fixed, right?
Not at all.
It changes and adapts,
To the world around it.
especially technology.
Like, absolutely.
It shapes how we access information.
How we share it, too.
You know, what strikes me about Postman's book
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not just like a history lesson.
It's more than that.
It feels relevant to parents today,
I agree.
even though he wrote it before smartphones.
Before social media,
Yeah.
he was ahead of his time.
He was.
And I think one of his most important points
Okay.
is that we're not powerless.
In the face of all this technology,
Right. We have choices.
we have agency.
Exactly.
We can make decisions about how we use technology.
How we raise our kids.
Yeah.
How we shape the future of childhood.
So let's talk about those choices. If we're giving our listeners some key takeaways,
Yeah. Actionable advice.
what are the most important things they can do?
I think it starts with our mindset.
Okay.
We need to see technology as a tool.
Not a master.
Right.
We control it, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Use it thoughtfully, intentionally,
And with an understanding of its impact.
especially on kids.
Yes, especially on children.
So it's not about, like, demonizing technology.
No, not at all.
It has its place.
It's about balance,
Being mindful.
setting healthy boundaries,
Yeah, being present in our kids' lives.
both online and offline.
We talked about limiting screen time and being careful about content.
Right, curating their experience.
What else can parents do?
Well, Postman talks about tech-free zones,
Interesting.
spaces in the home where devices are off limits.
Okay.
It could be the dinner table,
Yeah,
the family room,
makes sense.
even just a designated hour each day.
So you can connect without distractions.
Right. Focus on face-to-face interaction.
Have real conversations
Be present with each other.
and encourage those activities
Yes.
that foster curiosity.
Imagination, creativity,
Reading, playing outside.
imaginative play, exploring nature.
It's like counterbalancing the screen time.
It is giving them a well-rounded experience.
It's about protecting those special things about childhood.
Absolutely.
It's a good point.
It's about raising kids who are tech-savvy,
But also
resilient.
adaptable, able to navigate a complex world.
And I think that's what Postman was getting at.
Yeah.
He wasn't just trying to scare us.
Right.
He was calling us to action
To be conscious,
and
deliberate.
to shape a better future for childhood. That's actually a hopeful message.
It is.
We have a choice.
We do.
We have a say in how this all unfolds.
It starts with each of us.
In our homes, with our families.
If you're interested in exploring these ideas further,
Definitely check out Postman's book.
it's thought-provoking,
It'll make you think.
and it gives you tools for navigating this digital age. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it gave you some things to think about
And maybe some inspiration
for how to approach these challenges.
in your own lives.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep the conversation going.